Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm your host for today. I'm Rupesh Mittal, founder of Cyber Jagrithi Foundation. On behalf of Cyber Jagrithi Foundation, I invite you all for this special keynote address by Miss Khushbu Jain, Madam, who is an advocate at Supreme Court of India. Cyber Vakeel, an online cyber awareness campaign launched by Cyber Jagrithi Foundation, covering a multitude of themes on cyber crimes and aim to create awareness on cyber laws in India. The campaign is pitted around numerous topics and discussion related to subject of cyber laws and cyber crimes. We have scheduled the entire mass knowledge into wedges so that it's easily communicable and help to lay hold on cyber awareness. Our NGO, Cyber Jagrithi, has taken up this initiative on the occasion of Cyber Awareness Month, which is this month, October, a 30-day cyber awareness campaign specially designed for legal professionals, advocates, law professionals, research scholars, budding lawyers, students from various fields like engineering, BTech, or whatever you call it, and to give them an insight in the field of cyber crimes, and it can be easily effectively dealt by workshops, sessions, trainings, activities by the top-notch legal professionals in India. Today, we have an amazing personality with us, Khushbu Jain ma'am. Khushbu Jain's area of expertise is litigation practice pertaining to business, corporates, criminal law, and cyber law. She has represented clients which include government CPSCs, private companies, local businesses, individuals, and have been conducting cases which includes appearing personally and assisting senior counsels in Supreme Court of India, High Court of Delhi, High Court of Bombay, PMLA Court, Competition Commission of India, National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, and the list goes on. So today we have an amazing speaker with us, Miss Khushbu ma'am. So I would like to invite ma'am to join us and take over the session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time from your busy schedule and accepting our invitation and giving us chance to hear from you. So you might have heard ma'am mostly in TV, in every news channel, national news channel. Ma'am has given her advice. So it's really, I can't believe, if you see my hairs are also raising, to see ma'am over here. So I hope that you all will enjoy listening to ma'am and have a great session ahead. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're in mute.
Thank you so much. It's a very good initiative by the Cyber Jagrithi Foundation. It's much needed. It's requirement. Whereas the kind of awareness you're creating, whereas cyber law is concerned, or issues related to cyber space is concerned, and making cyberspace uh, a hygienic place for people to be. So looking at all these aspects, yes, it was much required for specific groups to work on, and Cyber Jagrati is doing one of the beautiful work in that area. Now, when we talk about cyber specific, there's nothing called as cyber. Whereas your IT Act is concerned, we don't define anything cyber. But if you take it cyber world, yes, let's restrict ourselves to the world of internet, or it comprises basically in a layman's language everything over internet. Uh, let's digital technology is encompassing in all walks of our life. It's making our life beautiful, it's making our life easy in every aspect, whereas our professional life is concerned, whereas our personal life is concerned, whereas other aspects of profession is concerned, or other aspects of lifestyle is concerned. Everything is becoming easy, and is there's an impact over there. At the same time, when we talk about what kind of opportunities are provided when we communicate, when we do our businesses, so in looking at all those okay, looking at all those purposes, the digital technology is one of the boon. And especially when we talk about the latest the COVID time, dependency, whereas our cyber world is concerned, that has increased almost thousand folds. The latest survey talks about that 300 300% increase in the screen time over last 5 months. When I say 300% increase in the screen time, and that's just a very basic survey done over there. So looking at the kind of dependency over technology is there, and our dependency over technology and how it is making your life easy. At the same time, there is a problem. The cyber criminals are exploiting community, are exploiting individuals, are exploiting businesses, are doing social engineering, and they're trying to harm the society in that manner. We look at I don't take cybercrime as to any different crime per se. With whereas your normal crimes are concerned, defamation was criminal. Slander, libel in the offline space. In the everyday life, the same thing. The same thing comes as to hello. So the same thing comes as to your online space. Anything which you can't do it offline, the same thing you cannot do it online. So it's just a replica of your offline space, which is criminal. The same thing comes on the online space, becomes criminal. People's dependency, whereas internet is concerned, is way too high, and it becomes easy because of anonymity, because of the cyber world, because of a lot of lacunas, which over the next 1 hour I'm going to talk about that why it's becoming very easy for criminals or perpetrators to take internet as one of the mode for the crime, and how the crimes are increasing threefold. And at the same time, whereas our law is concerned, what are the challenges we are facing when it comes to IT law, the information technology law for ours as on date, and at the same time the enforceability of those laws in place. Now if I say that these cyber crimes, these are majorly social or legal problem that entire world is facing. It's not restricted to just us, because the major part I talk about is the jurisdiction aspect, is another issue which I'm going to deal with, because it's a fenceless, borderless crime. There is nothing called as a crime happened which is, let's say, in Bombay is in Bombay, or in Indore is in Indore, or let's say country specific. It's there is nothing called as border or fencing, whereas cyber crimes are concerned. So how jurisdictional aspect is where one has to look into, or one has to focus upon. Now as I was talking about, let's go back to conventional crime. Uh, uh, Anything which you are forbidden, or which your punishment is imposed upon, or there's a conviction upon in your conventional crime, the old type of crime, the same thing, bring it a concept to the internet, and yes, that becomes a unlawful, or a crime per se itself. um, it can be done. I mean, simple definition, if I pick up Information Technology Act, that defines that any unlawful act which is by using any computer or computer related systems, whereas mobile or any of those things, any electronic item is used for doing any unlawful act which was there per se initially, also becomes a crime in itself, which comes under the category of cyber crime. Now IT Act, yes, that came in, I think, 2000. Almost all the major countries adopted IT Act via MCLAT. But then that IT Act came in at the time of looking at the e-commerce platforms, the way businesses were booming, and the way things were shifting towards internet. So they looked into that aspect, and they said that yes, let's have one cyberspace law related. But if we look at 2000 Act, the IT Act 2000, that caters more with regard to ease of doing business, or what all things come over there. Digital signatures, adaptability of digital signature is concerned. Other aspects, majorly on the part of e-commerce or things like that. A very few definitions of crime per se were being designated, or given, or being defined, or being convicted, whereas but we put in definitions of conviction, whereas IT Act 2000 was concerned. Then the things grew, and the crimes have taken place over internet. So since then we have a lot of amendments that has come to the IT Act. We had IT Act 2008, 2011 amendment. We have a lot of notifications coming in after that. Very recent one, if I pick it up, I mean, let's take example of few changes which have come up. The involvement of intermediary, one side of it, which we talk about, that how what role intermediary would play, because 80% of the crimes, the social crimes which are happening, are by using platforms such as OTTs or social intermediary platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or any other intermediary platform. So there came a guideline issued by MITI which talked about that what is the requirement of intermediary, and there was a safe harbor which was given by Section 230 in US, and the same thing was adopted here also in India, that we gave a safe harbor to all these platforms, that in case of a crime committed, they are giving exemptions. It's a safe harbor platform. They are not the one. They are just a platform. They would not be held liable. But at the same time, looking at the way crimes were happening, and internet. Everything travels with the speed of light. So looking at that, they said that okay, how what we should do. So then the notification came via MITI on intermediary that any crime happened within 3 days, you have to provide everything to us. It's a maximum 3 days. After that, you're legitimate. Like you would be also party to the crime. So that was one of the welcoming move. But just after a few days, there's a clarification that came, and that said that no, within 3 days you have to, just acknowledge the complaint, not per se solve the complaint. So that was one aspect that came in. Now, I mean, that is one aspect one has to look into again. Then your privacy framework, your sensitive information guideline came in. Then there are many guidelines, the law guidelines with regard to cyber cafe rules, because a lot of, at that time in 2011, a lot of cafes, we were all dependent on cyber cafes. So then came a notification that what are rules and regulations where a cyber cafe is concerned, because people used to commit crime. It used to be difficult for law enforcement agency to pick up the criminal, because the only information they used to get is which Wi-Fi, which is the address comes as to IP addresses of the cyber cafe, and the cyber cafe guy would not know about it. So then came the regulation with strict guidelines, like, as to what all things one a cyber cafe has to maintain. They have to maintain, keep a camera specific, time specific, even microseconds also, that this PC, this person was sitting with a photocopy of the ID to be attached with it, with a camera over there to have surveillance over it. So that came in play. So I'm saying that cyber field itself and the crimes happening over there per se are innovating. There is every day some other new crimes coming in, some other new modus operandi coming in. We are witnessing, not we, as to the entire world is witnessing different kind of crime happening. So looking at that aspect, there has been evolvement, whereas law is concerned, there has been evolvement, whereas enforcement of those laws is concerned, and we should look for something more holistic, which actually now covers. There's one bill which is there's one uh, um, framework. There's one IT Act framework which is still pending over discussions in the ministry, to bring in changes to cover all aspects of crimes, such as, I mean, let's go on the crimes which are there. What are the types of cyber crime, as to extortion, as to vandalism, as to cyber hate, harassment, email crimes, BEC, business email compromises, hacking is, yes, still punishable offense out there, cyber terrorism, financial crimes are at a boon. If I want, we can have a separate discussion over the financial crimes per se. But then financial crimes, because the way we are going towards the digital mode, payment mode, and everything is going digital, the crimes are happening. It's so easy, that one doesn't have to go and plan everything to attack a bank or to loot money from the banks. But practically you can do it from the home, just sending small link, or having basic information, or doing some social engineering using internet or some information available around, and send emails and do the financial crimes out there. We are releasing every day. There are some other news, whereas bank frauds are happening, or OTP frauds are happening, or some of the other kind of financial crimes are happening. Then we have cyber squatting, we have theft, we have identity theft. People identity. I mean, that's one of the major thing to come, which are compliances of doing more theft. You do identity theft. Then there are malicious codes which you send, denial of services. That has been one of the best way of asking for ransomware. That denial of services. So practically you have to have a specific amount to be paid in case you want to resume your business. um, Pornography is one, child pornography is another one, stalking is one of the major issues out there. Then I mean, these are few the latest ones. As I was saying, that everyday phishing, farming, smashing, wishing, copyright infringements happening over internet, software piracy, email threatening, spoofing, forgery. I would say. I mean, let's just keep on talking about, and they are there. So one holistic law which defines all these definitions in one act and have a punishments per se and the degree over it, that okay, what exactly is the involvement and how it should, is something we are required. Not that they are not punishable offense, they are still punishable offense, but your IT act completely doesn't cater to it. You have to have a combination of IPC, then you have to have IT act applied into it, and it's slightly cumbersome, and it becomes difficulty for the law enforcement also, with the ambiguity out there as to what exactly the sections to put or what sections not to put, and how one has to apply. आप रख दीजिए, मैं ले लूंगी. हाँ. No, just leave it. So, what exactly is the kind of crime one has to, crime one has to cover or focus into? So law enforcement also face problem. Challenges are there in that aspect also. Challenges are there for the people also to understand that what exactly when you commit a crime, whether you're actually committing a crime. There's an ambiguous space there also. People kept on doing things and they really do not know that that's a crime. The recent example I'll take it as, during this pandemic time, there was a specific notification. The law says the Disaster Management Act and the Epidemic Act. The Epidemic Act very specifically talks about that any rules and regulations made during this time of epidemic by the government, state government, or the state center government would be abide. If not, then Section 188 of IPC would apply, and that's a punishable offense. Now, all the state governments issued a specific notifications that none of the uh, party are allowed to, to none of the parties are allowed to issue any kind of none of the parties are allowed to issue any kind of So none of the parties are allowed to spread any information with related to COVID or Corona, which is not cross-checked by the official sources or cross-checked from the actual source out there. So you're not allowed. The moment you spread anything which is fake, which kind of creates disruption to a society or to a group of to any specific group, that's a punishable offense. The punishment can go up to 6 months. And there are specific acts also which talked about spreading of fake news which hurt sentiments of individual or community or specific group is a punishable offense. That punishment goes up to almost 3 years. So looking at that, people were not aware. I'm not aware. There are a large number of sections who are not aware about it. You feel okay, this is the information, let me forward. So we keep on forwarding using our platforms, whatever messaging platforms we have, but not knowing the part that you are actually party to the crimes. It's happening to such a large extent that enforceability becomes a problem because it's done maybe not knowing or whatever it is. But the kind of impact it has, we have seen during COVID what kind of impact due to misinformation India had to face. It's not just India. We look at Morocco. There was a misinformation which was spread that drinking phenyl can actually a specific portion of phenyl can actually get you, you'll never have corona. So people drank, and there was mishap happening because of that. Then there was very then there was another news which there was a lady who on she was an influencer, put on YouTube and said that there's nothing called as COVID or corona, and she went on giving entire thing that this is nothing but one of the gimmick by a specific section of people for some benefits. And then she was arrested again, and people started following that portion of it. So what I say is that unawareness of the law also is creating a lot of issues. So I say that when we talk about cyber law, awareness, at the same time creation of better laws catering to all these different definitions which we're talking about, so that we don't have to one doesn't have to go combination of different laws. And even after combination, a lot of crimes go unheard of. So one has to understand these aspects, and at the same time look into the enforceability part of it. When I was talking about types of cybercrime, I think I've covered major portion of cyber crimes which are there. We have password. We have uh, We have financial crimes. So if I talk about financial crimes, I'll specifically, it's cyber laundering. It can be credit card fraud, which we see every day. We have attacks, salami attacks. We have online gambling. We have sale of illegal items. When I talk about identity theft, one can look into phishing, farming, smishing, or wishing. Malicious codes people send you, such as viruses such as microvirus or boot viruses, or when I talk about um, extortion, cyber vandalism, hate, harassment, uh, password hacking, computer hacking, email frauds, forgery, bombing, spamming. So defamatory emails. I would say that yes, there's a huge scope to bring in specific definitions, to bring in specific laws with in this regard. What kind of punishments to define? So there's a huge scope where a cyber law is concerned to bring in definitions, to bring in changes. But at the same time, I would say that yes, enforceability is another issue. Jurisdiction is another. I'll talk after let's we talk about the enforceability part of it, because even if we have it, or jurisdiction and enforceability at the same time, even we have these laws as a specific definition, but the moment I talk about the enforceability, that becomes difficulty, especially when we talk about cybercrime being borderless or fenceless. It becomes difficulty for any law enforcement to practically look into it. Evidences is another challenge. Electronic evidences as to uh, admissibility of electronic evidences, and scene of crime. So our enforcement is very well equipped when it comes to taking care of uh, uh, scene of crime, whereas in actual physical is concerned. But when a computer or an electronic item becomes your scene of crime, looking at that, it becomes difficulty as to what one has to procure, what one has to preserve, in what manner one has to preserve, what would be the admissible one, whether the copying or hashing has to be done, whether anything which you copy as an electronic item can be admissible evidence in the court of law. What exactly, when it comes to, when involvement of platforms is concerned. So when we say platform, what kind of data one has to ask from these platforms, whether one has to send a preservation notice, under what section, what are the specific things you need to preserve for it to be admissible and for your matter to actually be complete. So that's another challenge which is being faced as on date, whereas your cyber law is concerned. So even if I, let's say, the first aspect comes as to reaching at the place there, that law, that there is some violation or there's some crime that has been committed. So that itself is a challenge, looking at cyberspace, looking at VPNs, proxy sites, um, looking at the wide area, something committed in, let's say, African countries, or Finland or Norway, and something committed over here. It becomes difficulty for challenge for law enforcement to practically understand how and what to apply. The second aspect comes is ki, okay, one understands also, okay, this is the thing. Then at the same time, how do you execute, what kind of evidences you preserve, in what manner one should preserve, which are the places one has to ask for. So there's a lot of challenges for the law enforcement also. So I would say that, whereas your law is concerned, cyber law, one has to have a dedicated part. We do have it, I'm not saying that we don't, but we need to have a dedicated part, whereas enforceability of these laws are concerned, whereas evidence is concerned. Now coming at the jurisdiction aspect, as we all know that how jurisdiction plays a very important role, whereas your criminal law is concerned. But then with the cyber, it's again another challenge as to how do you communicate. Communication between two state polices, a difficulty is what we see. And when I talk about a crime happening, let's say, let's just take a very basic example of a bank fraud that happened. So let's say there's a OTP fraud that happened, or some of the, or let's take a very basic example that you went on to buy buy some okay, let's take an example that one has to buy something online, and I went on clicking it, and there was a second hand deal that was happening, and I said, okay, I like it, what would be the quoting price? So they said, this is the price. So I agree about it, we go offline over it. Okay, we agree to buy. Then he sends me that, okay, I'm sending you a link where you have to where you can transfer the money. and it is done. So I have to transfer. I was like, okay, perfectly fine. So he sends me a link. He's like, I'll send you a link, and once you click on it, then money transfer has to be happened. Then money transfer, instead of coming, it goes from my account as to 10,000 rupees. So then I get a very instant second moment a call that, ma'am, by mistake, I think it has come in my account. Rather than transferring it, I'm sending you another link for 20,000, 10 for this and 10 for reversal. I said, okay, perfectly fine. Then I click on it, my another 20 goes. Then I get a call instantly in a second that, ma'am, I think there is some issue. Let me do another transaction. So practically, they don't give me a minute to think about, and because he's calling me up again, I don't have that thought process. That my thought process doesn't start that whether the guy is committing crime against, or he's taking away my money because he's running after that. I want to return it to you. So there have been so many instances where people have gone up to 4 transactions, 5 transactions, and after that fourth and fifth, they're gone. So then you complain. So when I complain, let's say a bank which is involved into it, and at the platform which is involved, and I give all the details. So once I do that, then problem comes is the account which the money has been transferred. That account was just a middle account. The money has from there been transferred to the third to the fourth, and it has gone. Let's say from Bombay, it has gone to Bhubaneswar. From Bhubaneswar, it has gone to some place in let's say Jharkhand, and from that, it has gone to some place in African state. Let's say Kenya. Now, which police should I involve? How many police should get involved for an amount which is 40,000 rupees? How one has to do, where the FIR would be registered, and how they would, how this entire chain would go and they would look into it. So that becomes a major play when it comes to jurisdiction aspect, not just jurisdiction of filing a court case or an FIR, but at the same time for them to actually try and execute also. And because it travels so many places and there is no proper framework which says that okay, this has to be a unified way of doing things, there has to be a structure, there has to be a connection between the state police and national polices, whereas cyber is concerned, it's difficulty. We do have dedicated bilateral agreements with countries where they say that we're gonna, but then these small crimes, everyday crimes happening, which runs in thousands and thousands of numbers, or I should say lakhs of numbers. For that everyday communication with another state police, or a national at the national level with another nation's police, is a difficulty which has to come in place properly. We do have a framework which was pending discussion, I think, in July in UN, with regard to cyber, where all the countries were to come and give entire their own framework as to what one has to do to bring in one holistic framework and guideline and law, whereas cyber space is concerned, because it's not, as I said, it's not just India, it's almost all the nations are fighting about it. Now, shifting on to the part. So yes, jurisdiction is another thing. Now, if I look at the evidence, every day there is some new judgment coming in, the latest coming in, that okay, which is admissible evidence, which is not, which is secondary evidence, which covers where one has to give 65B certificate, where doesn't have to give 65B certificate. So ambiguity there also, who has to give 65B certificate is also another challenge which nobody knows. Like there's so much of an ambiguity in that space, with judgments which say that this is very specific, Supreme Court saying this is very specific to this case, but then that becomes, that has been used in as in general, that okay, so example, as to, let's say I record there's a recording, there's an incident that has happened in mall, and there's a video recording over there with the camera over there. So, but then that camera recording is completely, let's say, for hours and hours of it, and you want specifically 4:30 to 6:30 period. So, would you take a copy of it? When you take a copy of it, I can practically manipulate. There can be alteration, there can be changes, there can be not the original which is there for that place specific. So one has to comply with Section 65B certificate with it, that whatever I'm seeing and I'm copying, it's first hand and it's same identical as to the original one. So that has to comply, and whosoever is the one who's doing the copy at that time has to give that certificate. So a little less awareness about that part also is where problem is. Then part comes as to when it comes to emails, who has to give 65B certificate. When it comes to Facebook related aspects, a crime has happened, let's say I call data from Facebook that provide us all these data. So who, for example, so what exactly, who gives 65B certificate, what is the admissibility of that evidence, in what manner it should come, when it comes, how it should be saved. So these are the little areas which one has to work, not just lawyers, also the victims, the first hand awareness, whereas we are concerned because first hand evidence collection would be from me, what exactly has to be done. Like, for example, if a crime has committed against an individual, the first thing I should do is I should click at the URL, save the entire URL, or click the screenshot of the entire URL, because that's the address one can understand, because a lot of things get deleted over internet and then it's like gone. There's nothing that can be done to solve the crime at a lot of times. Then the second aspect comes as to, apart from the internet, take the screenshot of all the things that have happened, that have happened to an extent that take all the screenshots of, let's say there's a crime with regard to threatening messages, or with regard to stalking, or with regard to sending abusive or vulgar messages. So take a screenshot of all of it, take a screenshot of URL, take a screenshot of dedicated pages, and keep that as a copy of it. How one has to report, one has to understand what all things one should keep to report. So these are the areas one need to understand. But yeah, we would restrict ourselves now, coming back to the aspect of cyber crime, and what all challenges we face. So challenges covering to the aspect of changes in law which is required, because it's really going at a very fast speed, to an extent that data protection bill is something now we should look into, because now the crimes are changing. Initially we used to say that yes, they used to lock your content, and they used to say, ransomware used to say that you can't practically, the DOS which you talk about, you can't use your data till you pay us X amount. Now the laws have changed to an extent that they know that privacy laws in Europe, in US, in UK are so stringent that if somebody's personal data, you take somebody's personal data, and that is because of your default is, or because of your mistake is being out there, the penalties are as high as 2 to 4% of your global turnover. 2 to 4% of your global turnover, and it can be for every breach. So these criminals are also very smart. They say that okay, let me use that. So the latest one, I think we just heard it a month or two back, where they said that there was a hit at a law firm and a very good investment, big reputed investment firm, which said that if you don't, the so people have started making copies of their data, so that some attack happens, so they have another data, so their business runs. So these criminals have become smart. So they say that if you don't give us X amount, the ransomware which you're asking, I'm going to release your top celebrity datas, financial datas, investment datas, or when it comes to law firms, some other datas. So they say that we're going to release that in public, and then yeah, be happy about the breaches. The latest one, Equifax got attack was attacked, and there was a breach over there, and there was a penalty imposed. Uber, the penalty was imposed on Uber also. uh, so there have been a lot of instances where penalties are imposed, and if you look at our data protection bill, if the same data protection bill come in place, then we would also look at imprisonment also, as if there is a willful breach and ISO standard 27001 is not followed, that would come in place. At the same time, the new laws where we talk about cyber, because we know that data is the new oil and things are happening with data. Right to privacy is one of the fundamental right, thanks to Kiputoswamy. Then your data protection will come in place. Then after that, we have latest framework which was issued in this session of Parliament, which is DEPA. So DEPA is another one aspect where we say that okay, we can't practically control, the data selling and everything. So why not? Let's make a proper way of specific non-personal data or personal data also, where somebody consents how it has to be traded, who has to use it. There's a proper dedicated authority where one can keep the data and can be used for XYZ purposes. Why I might have to multiply my documents to give it to somebody? I can keep my data that at that data protection dedicated machinery and institute, and then I can ask that okay, for let's say for insurance purposes or for financial purposes, that should be the place you should cross check my documents, or specifically ask, maybe not. I mean, if you look at the data protection, the data which I'm talking about, it is to an extent that one can expect that my data should be deleted, right to be forgotten is being catered into. So I would say that yes, changes are coming. Data protection bill, DEPA. Then we have the framework with regard to non-personal data. Then we have fake news related specific dedicated laws coming in place, or they are asking the platforms to look into that aspect, that how one should do. Then I think the latest one has been, because all these machineries, all these platforms never used to abide by the laws, and that kind of misinformation and kind of crimes happening over these platforms. So I think the latest IT minister spoke very specifically that you need to have very specific community guidelines, whereas India is concerned, because half of the things they don't consider crime as crime, whereas India is concerned, they have their own standard. They said that their country's guideline or laws are bigger than their company's laws are bigger than my country's law. So I would say that that has always been my scenario, that your company's law cannot supersede my country's law. So if you're abiding, or if you're staying, or if you want to have business in my country, one has to abide with the laws which my country has. So looking at that, yes, changes are coming over there, but there has to be a little more stringent law. We cannot adopt Section 230, which gave a safe harbor to these platforms, but there has to be, and we cannot stop that also. So one has to understand that data is the new oil. Industries are running over data. You cannot not say that there has to be no collection, but there has to be a proper framework looking at that aspect also, because half of your crimes are happening because one has data over you, or one has, the social engineering is done beautifully when I have access to your data. Another example which I can give you is the latest. I think during pandemic, almost everybody, there was a newspaper articles. There has been enough and more newspaper articles where everybody got new, emails that this is your passport and we know what you have been browsing. So this is what one has to send in order to, for us not to release it. And people got scared, and half of the people got duped into it. But that was not just to you, that was sent it to millions and millions of people, because there was some breach at some level where some of your old passwords were there, which was there, the dump is over there, and they picked it up and they sent it to all of you. Half of us don't change our passwords, and we felt, oh my god, that's a password, that's my password, he has my password, that means he knows my history. And rest of the half of the people went to an extent that, yes, this was, so they must be aware about that history part of it, that it was there, so they are aware about it. I think you can go to a website and check that all of us have been, at least once or twice there has been a breach, whereas we are party to that. Go to a website called as Have I Been Pawned. I'll just write that website on the chat box for you, and just put in your email address and check that whether your emails or credentials have been compromised, or what extent your data has been compromised. And it's so easy for anybody to dupe you or to play the social engineering on you. So I would say that more the data, more the access to the data creates problem, but then yes, one cannot part way. So some framework which is in between, something like DEPA, something like data protection bill, specific guidelines, what is personal, what is non-personal, what is sensitive, what is critical, and how one has to do things has to come in place. At the same time, I would say that the major requirement is jurisdictional aspect, the requirement of keeping one data in India, so that law enforcement agencies can impose our laws, and these people comply with those rules and regulations, whereas India is concerned, because when data is not saved in India, it becomes difficulty to get that data and to enforce any law against anybody who has committed crime. So the data localization which we talk about, and which I think RBI issued a very good circular for financial institutions, that for financial institutions to stay in India need to have, I think this was 2018 guideline notification, which was issued 2018 or 19 if not mistaken, which was specifically for financial institutions, issued by RBI, which said that in order for you to financial institutions to stay or have business in India, need to have their data in data centers stored in India. They cannot have their data stored outside. They need to have their data stored in India, all the financial data. So that was one of the welcoming move to have, though it's difficult to impose, but now it doesn't seem like that, with the way our data center industries is booming, and how comparatively how cheap it is. So data localization laws is another one thing I would see coming in place. Recognizing all the types of cyber crimes which I'm talking about is another aspect. the aspect of law enforcement agencies to have enforceability of these laws, mechanism and machinery is another aspect, whereas cyber law and challenges are concerned, because just by having law and no machinery over it, or no scene of crime, whereas your internet or computer is concerned, or electronic item is concerned, if there is a vacuum over there or an absence over there, that also creates a problem. So I would say that. And apart from that, something that is at the same time, cyber
Hello, guys. Just wait for a minute. I think we have lost Madam. Yeah, Madam.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Madam.
Okay, I think something went wrong.
No issues.
Yes. So yeah, I was on the part that these are the changes one has to look into, and let's hope they come with the changes, with some amendments, or defining all these things, and at the same time, very clear cut definition, holistic in one specific act, so that we don't have to go for combinations of different acts, or look into it that there is something which clearly doesn't define and where do I fit in. Recent example, I think 66A, which was struck down by the Honorable Supreme Court in Shreya Singhal versus Union of India. Though that was a very good move with regard to the specific ambiguity in the definition, but one has to cannot strike down, because striking down create a lot of issues. Now everybody takes internet and writes anything and everything, and yes, we have, the impact have been so huge of such kind of things written or done or said over internet, and law enforcement is helpless. So I would say that striking down was not a proper way to do it. I would say that there has to be clarification towards that ambiguity on that specific definition, which could have been clarified and looked into. So let's hope for clear definitions. We cannot not have laws, but let's have laws and definitions and then enforcement of that. I would prefer now any more specific questions or dedicated topics somebody wants me to cover. I'll cover those.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for that. Now we'll take few questions, ma'am.
Please.
Uh, yes, ma'am. As no, yeah, as you were mentioning just frequently about the various, in internet on social media of, very recently we had a session with few celebrities also, in which a lot of, you see in lots of social media pages, people just write whatever they want. So what, according to you, can be action on that?
So
What should they do
no. So
basically?
when it comes to writing anything, yeah, there's a lot of ambiguous space over there, because 66A was struck down. It became it's a challenge for law enforcement to practically book somebody under somebody writing anything against you. But one way is that if it hits modesty of women, if it's against the national integrity or sovereignty of the nation. So if it fits in few definitions, there are few IT acts or IPC which can be covered. Uh, but at the same time, or languages, when I say obscenity, when it's modesty of women, it's a very wider term. One can book into it, but it's not just women. I think it's anybody, or it can be anybody or everybody over internet, where celebrities are abused or being said things. So looking at that, yes, there has to be one specific section that has to. I'm waiting for that to come. But you do have recourse, whereas defamation is concerned. You do have recourse, whereas filing a case against them is concerned. But difficulty comes as to uh, which crime, which definition you fit them into, and then ask these platforms that provide us that who is this anonymous, or who is this XYZ, or who is this I am this or I am that kind of anonymized name which you use. So so that becomes difficulty, that get first to get who is the one behind that profile, to reach to that person, and then after one can think of, okay, we have reached that person, what section do you book them under? So yes, but then you do have that once you get to know about it or you're aware about it. Yes, defamation is one notice you can put, slander or libel or any of those things. Apart from that, if it's a known institute or let's say if it's a media platform, then yes, you can have proper dedicated notices issued to them and you can ask for compensation. And if it fits into the definition of modesty of women, sovereignty, integrity, or creating ruckus for a different specific society or an individual, or disturbing law and order, if it fits into these categories, then yes, there are sections in IT Act and in IPC where the punishment can go from 6 months to almost 3 years to yes.
Ma'am, also we have few professors here because this is a lot of happening now in many colleges. People use mailing platforms like I'm not getting the name. So there are few anonymous email options, so wherein you send emails and the provider doesn't encourage law enforcement with details. So a lot of things like that happen. So as India banned, recently we have seen we have banned more than 200 websites. So what about those websites? Are there any as according to you, are there any things government is taking in them, so to
So the reason of banning those apps, which we have seen recent action by the government of India, wherein 44 apps, then another action, then another. So there have been three circulars, I think three or four circulars issued for banning certain apps. But if you see the reason that have been very specific, that they were taking your data and storing in countries like in China, or they were in a way hurting the sovereignty of or integrity, or in a way which is against the nation, or it can create disturbances. So coming into that category, yes, they did it. But what you talk about is there are a lot of websites which are running, which are not legal or which are not legit or which are not complying with the rules and regulations, whereas India is concerned. Looking at that, yes, you can always complain with the specific dedicated websites, and you can say that for what reason this is not complying, this doesn't come, and MITI or certain or your specific dedicated police station can forward it to certain to look into it, and action can be taken. But this last three orders are the first time that something like that action has been taken against the mobile apps. Against the websites, yes, blocking does happen over the websites, but I would say that there has to be specific reason. If I'll give you a data, Apple has received last year 740 requests from countries, 740 requests from countries just to take down certain apps because they are not abiding with their laws, country
yes.
specific laws. There have been countries like China, Russia, North Korea, which have been highest in number, asking Google Play Store and this thing to take down. China doesn't even have Apple Store there. They have Google Play, but then
Yes,
they don't have it all. But I would say
recently
that
Paytm also was removed from Play Store, I guess, for some
yeah,
time.
because they, but no, that was specifically for the payment, I think, part of it, and they were not abiding. So I would say that yes, there is a mechanism to stop or to for these website for these apps not to work. There is a mechanism we do. Whereas child pornography was illegal, there have been enough and more of websites which are being blocked by the government for them not to work. But the problem comes as to, let's say, I have opened up a website, Khushbu.com, and if that's blocked, these people just have another one and they'll say Khushbu1.com,
Oh God,
Khushbu3.com.
yes,
It
yes.
keeps on coming. So one has to be very vigilant. So I would say you can always have a very specific, you can make a complaint and that can be acted upon. At the same time, I'll give you an example that insurance, this thing, crimes were happening, that government was providing insurances at certain amount and they were giving rebate. So people started making websites as to Ayushman Bharat or some other, or there were some around 60 websites which were made, and people were duped. People were coming, people used to go, it's so easy to see, okay, ayushmanbharat.gov.in, or number here and there or something, or dot here and there, and people were duped. So government actually had to look into all of it, sit, and then almost 60 websites were blocked, and advisory was issued. Same happens with income tax also, especially at the time of returns and all of that. You keep on getting it. So I said that keeps happening. So one has to look into it and give a dedicated. You can go to cybercrime.gov.in and also register your complaint if you don't want to visit police station. You can be anonymized also, but one has to remember, for any law enforcement or any specific this thing to act upon, they need to have a lot of some bases into it. So always collect your bases and apply. You want to be anonymous, be anonymized, but then apply with a lot of data along with you, so that they don't have to work upon and can be acted very fast.
Sure. Madam, we are getting one question. What are the remedies in cyber law for people who harass other person by hacking the Wi-Fi and move the victim's hand in sleep? I'm
And
not
move
sure
the
what victim's hand in sleep. Like maybe like someone hacked my Wi-Fi, did some crime with me, and he has. So
so
yes. So
if you
anything
can
for that.
who has hacking is a criminal offense in IT Act. You cannot, anybody who is hacking or who's tampering with any electronic item of yours is a punishable offense under IT Act. So one, if you can gather information, if you have a lot of ways, or a prudent way to believe, then register an FIR. It can be an FIR against nobody and it can continue. Or if you know that you suspect, then go and then investigation can be looked into. There's always a footprint, whereas digital space is concerned. You cannot just there are ways to look into it. Not that it's that easy to be scot free, whereas internet concerned, because your footsteps are there, and that would be there. So yes, complain, and if it's looked into and the trail is there, yes, it's a punishable offense in IT Act.
Madam, one last question, and then I think we'll wind it up. Madam, as you also already mentioned, there are a lot of questions again coming because of jurisdiction issues. So, anything, I think it should be a repetitive thing. I also want to listen on that personally. So, and you would you like to say again upon, the jurisdiction issues? So, suppose it happened with me in Hyderabad. It went to Delhi, from Delhi to it went to Pune and all. So, where exactly it should be filed? Cybercrime.gov.in is one thing.
One thing, the another one is wherever you reside, nearest police station you can file. The other jurisdiction comes as to jahan pe bhi crime hua hai. Like for example, you were in Bombay, something like that happened, you go to the nearest police station and file it. You can always say that okay, this is how it is, and I want my zero FIR to be done over here and can be transferred to the dedicated area later. But wherever you reside, your nearest police station can be the one which can happen. But if let's say it's a specific fraud which can be looked into, okay, I was sitting in this PC and something happened here in that premise, do on internet, then you can go to the nearest police station there. But it can be anywhere nearest. So your filing can be where you reside, the nearest police station, go over, or against somebody you feel that okay, this is the person who has done it, go to the nearest police station of that. Or if you feel the crime has happened, the first knowledge you got it, let's say in Hyderabad, and you're there, you go over there and file it. But the best is wherever you reside or your office is, the nearest police station of that to go, so that the address can be put in that manner.
Also, if any visits are, to be made so that it's easy to visit also.
Easy. It's easy.
Yes.
Otherwise, you should go with cybercrime.gov.in. If it's a banking fraud or something like that has happened, you can file it. You can give a toll free number to your bank very fast. Don't wait. Toll free number pe give details. Take all the screenshots. They'll give you an email ID, or you already have an email ID of your specific bank or payment gateway. Mail everything to them. If they don't reply to that, the banking ombudsman doesn't come. Within 3 months, you can go to RBI specific ombudsman. You can give that I have complained. This is my complaint number, and that has not been acted upon. So I think I forgot the website name and this thing of RBI. I'll put it on my Twitter by tomorrow, which can be looked
Sure,
into.
sure. We'll also put in the
I'll
description.
cyber Jagrati. I'll tag cyber Jagrati. So RBI will look into it, and you provide everything over there as to what happened, what is the amount. They have a dedicated, RBI has a dedicated portal where you can see that what all things they need. You put in all of those things, do the attachments, and they'll look into it. So that way, I think, and anything other, cybercrime.gov.in is one of the best place to put in anonymized also, or you can call your nearest police station.
Okay. Madam, sorry for saying last and again taking a question. So there is one last question. It is actually need of the hour also. You see now a calculator app asks for contacts permission. This permission issues we face a lot in many apps. So any action can be taken on them. As an organization, we also want to know that because we are an NGO, we want to suppose file on anything, any app or any organization like that. How should we go ahead with that?
No, so for example, you do have an option of, let's say, you get an app of calculator and it asks for your location, so you deny. If they deny and they still continue, it's absolutely fine. But if you deny and they don't want to give you services, that becomes a difficulty. Then your right to be forgotten under Kepotaswamy becomes a difficulty you can challenge. But the purpose, for today, for you to file any complaint against them is something which doesn't exist as of now. But
Okay.
at the same time, if they are asking 10 things from you, there is a obligation on them. At the current law also, under IT Act, there is a guideline which says that personal and sensitive information has to be kept in certain manner. And if you look at that guideline, if they don't comply with those guidelines, they don't save your data properly, probably you can be booked under that you took my XYZ data, and that XYZ data is with some other YZ, and that is because you have not been able to save my data, so it can be booked. So I would say that if we are entering into the space where we are creating our own apps and stuff like that, take minimal data, whatever is required, because your data principles or privacy principles very specifically talk about information disclosure, talks about that how much information one has to take. There has to be a nexus between the information to an extent that information A has to be asked. So there's a purpose limitation is one of the principles, privacy principles. So when you ask for information, there has to be a purpose behind that. A calculator doesn't need to have my location. What is the purpose for it?
Yes.
So one has to comply with those 9 privacy principles, which are prevalent all over the world. With JP Shah coming in, and then it was there in K Puttaswamy also. So if you don't comply or there's any breach, I mean, I think the data protection bill coming in place, that would be difficulty. At the same time, let's wait for the non-personal data and other data frameworks also coming to come existence with PDPR coming in place. That would be difficult for anybody to do something like that.
Sure. Ma'am, can we take one more question, please?
Yeah, please, no problem.
So sorry, that I said last question. I have taken 3 questions
No,
more.
no, no
Ma'am,
problem.
in many organizations, like they have their own privacy policy or their internet policy or their data policy, whatever they collect. And in that, they mentioned that recently we also experienced this, that in financial application, a loan giving application, they mentioned that they can collect your data, including contacts. They have clearly mentioned on their website. So if such thing is happening, and people who were, suppose I have taken loan and I have not paid it, so my friends were getting messages and calls, threatening messages and calls.
Oh, this you can complain very well. You should go and complain. This can be complained that your data has been used for XYZ purposes you were not complied with. And I think they don't do it themselves. They share it to the third party. And that third party calls you up that, or calls your relative that this much is amount is pending and this is happening. Especially, I think I have had complaints from a lot of platforms such as Cash Free or something. The
Yes, yes.
platforms loan and
Your friend is, international, something they were mentioning.
absolutely, absolutely. So they cannot do that. That's a hawala wasuli. They cannot do something like that. They have to comply with proper. First of all, they can't provide you loan. They
Okay.
can't. RBI doesn't allow anybody to provide loan till the time you're not registered, or you're an NBFC.
Okay.
You can One cannot provide, an entity cannot provide a loan to somebody till the time you're not registered entity with RBI. If they do anything like that, you can, if it's a registered NBFC and still going into that extent, you can file against them an RBI, and also at the you can file an FIR. Now if they're not NBFC, they're not complying with that rules and regulations, still they call you up and do all those things. That can be a very dedicated complaint in the police station. You don't even have to go to cyber police station. Go to your nearest police station, file a complaint against them that you're getting threatening calls, and they're getting into your privacy, and they're your other people are being harassed. They
Okay.
cannot. That's not the right way to do it.
So you mean reverse उस पे जा सकते हैं?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely you can.
Okay. I think any more questions, please do email us or write in the chat. We'll try to answer, because we are lack of having very shortage of time. So thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out 1 hour for us and spending this. It was very huge. Our writers are struggling to write the minutes of meeting. Lot of information was shared. I'm getting messages, sir. इतना information है कैसे to write the minutes of meeting. इतना information share हुआ है. So thank you so much, ma'am. It's you have shown your expertise in your words, that you have that much of knowledge in your words. In this 1 hour, you have covered entire thing. What it's just unimaginable that these many things were covered. Jurisdictions were covered. A lot of things were covered. Thank once again from the board and from the team Cyber Vakeel. I thanks a lot to you, ma'am, for taking out time and spending with us.
No problem.
So thank you so
It was
much, participants, for bearing us for this 1 long hour. And the recording, I'll keep the recording. I know all of you are asking for recording. I will keep the recording. You can slowly listen it back, keep it 2x speed and listen it back. I know it was very high session. So you can stay back and listen to the recording. We will put it on the YouTube itself, so you can listen to it. And tomorrow we are again having a session with Dr. Karnika ma'am. She is also an advocate at Supreme Court of India. She will be discussing a lot of questions were there on how to best colleges in cyber law course and all. So about all those career options which you have on cyber law course, you can come back and join us tomorrow same time. So thank you so much, ma'am, once again.
No problem. Thank you so much. And all the
Pleasure,
best.
pleasure. Thank you so much, ma'am.